Welcome back to ZNGP Today. Veteran manager Carlo Pernat laid out a clear reading of Sepang on fast. The Malaysian GP showed a grid in flux, competitive, chaotic and far more open now that Marc Márquez is absent. Pernat praised Alex Márquez's composed win, lauded Pedro Acosta's raw talent, and warned that manufacturers and riders alike face hard questions before 2026. His verdict: the championship is healthier for the uncertainty, but teams must act fast to seize the moment. A curious stat from Sepang. Pedro Acosta has become the Spanish rider with the most MotoGP podium finishes without ever winning: 9 top 3 placings, 5 seconds, 4 thirds, and counting. It's a headline that mixes praise and unfinished business. Acosta's consistency has already made him a regular factor at the front, yet the final step onto the top step remains elusive. For a rider so young and talented, the narrative is less a crisis than a challenge, one that could break in his favor as KTM and he continue to evolve. Pecco Bagnaia's promising Malaysian Grand Prix ended in frustration, but the mystery of what went wrong is now clearer. Telemetry and tire checks confirm the Ducati suffered a puncture on lap 12, with the rear pressure falling to around 0.6 bar before the tire finally gave out and forced retirement on lap 18. What looked at first like another performance wobble was in fact a freak bit of race luck. A piece of debris embedded in the tire, and the data explains why Bagnaia's lap times suddenly collapsed. Don't forget to click subscribe button and the bell icon for MotoGP news update. Pernat opened by celebrating the variety on the podium. 3 manufacturers represented and 3 very different riders' stories. He argued that closer manufacturers make the title more interesting for fans, and Sepang delivered that spectacle. Victory for Alex Márquez, with a podium composed of 3 different manufacturers. It's good for the Motorcycle World Championship because when the manufacturers get closer, the championship becomes more interesting. Variety breeds drama, and drama sells. Sepang was MotoGP's reminder that parity creates storylines beyond a single dominant name. Pernat was blunt about the elephant in the room. Marc Márquez's injury removed the season's reference point. Where one figure once stamped predictability on results, his absence has made victory possibilities far wider. Let's not forget that Marc, the strongest of them all, is missing. Since Marc is no longer here, the situation is more fluid, unpredictable. The data tell the same story: multiple winners, shuffled standings, a temporary reset where opportunity meets volatility. Pernat singled out Alex Márquez for praise. The younger Márquez's mindset and result underlined that his second place in the championship is thoroughly earned. The victory at Sepang came from attitude as much as speed. When a rider converts pressure into performance, the title of deserved is earned, and Pernat thinks Alex has done just that. Pernat reserves strong words for Acosta, calling him a phenomenon who keeps KTM competitive despite the bike's resource limits. Acosta's daring, including removing electronic aids to suit his style, convinced Pernat he's a special talent. He is a phenomenon, truly a phenomenon. He is the only one who manages to keep this KTM high. Raw talent on a less fancied package often illuminates future stars. Pernat sees Acosta as precisely that kind of rare rider. Any of Bastianini's combative races show KTM can be made to work, Pernat suggested, even if qualifying results don't reflect the speed shown in races. Bastianini's charge through the field is proof that KTM's project has momentum, if not yet consistency. Racecraft sometimes masks weekend weaknesses. KTM's challenge is turning race day fireworks into more regular front-running starting positions. Pernat argued Honda has improved with Marini and technical hires, creating a balanced bike that's close to the top, potentially just missing a phenomenal rider to finish the puzzle. By contrast, Yamaha's V4 gamble looks risky but necessary. Quartararo's commitment shows faith, but the transition will be tricky. Yamaha is working with great difficulty. Fabio is not happy with the situation. The V4 will arrive, but next year will not be easy for Yamaha either. Manufacturers face divergent paths. Honda consolidation versus Yamaha reinvention, both with big stakes for 2026-27. With Marc sidelined, Pernat frames the closing rounds as a mini-tournament, to be won or lost in Valencia. He sees Aldeguer among those who can capitalize, and expects two fun, unpredictable GPs ahead. There are still 2 Grands Prix to go. Since Marc is no longer here, the situation is more fluid, unpredictable. I think that at the head of this mini-tournament is Aldeguer. Short-term narratives now matter as much as championship arcs. Momentum harvested in the final rounds could shape off-season plans. Pernat criticized the medium-tire decisions that harmed Bagnaia and Bezzecchi, and urged Aprilia to remain ambitious if it wants to contend with Ducati across all circuits. He praised Aprilia's leadership but warned more work is needed to make the RSGP a universally strong package. Let's hope Bagnaia can get out of this tunnel. Aprilia's poor performance is a negative point. If it wants to compete with Ducati, it must be competitive everywhere. Tactical tire gambles backfired at Sepang. The bigger challenge is structural, closing the gap to Ducati in multiple environments. Carlo Pernat's Sepang verdict was simple and sharp. MotoGP is healthier for the uncertainty, but teams must act quickly. The title picture without Marquez is a short, intense duel of opportunists: Acosta, Aldeguer, Alex Márquez and others, while manufacturers juggle development gambles and strategic hires. Pernat's closing note was optimistic but wary. Enjoy the drama. But remember that predictability will return once the big names are fit. And when it does, the paddock must be ready. 9 Premier Class podiums so far is an impressive tally for any rider, let alone one still early in his MotoGP career. The oddity is that all those results sit between P2 and P3, not a single victory. In contrast, veterans like Marc Márquez sit on triple-digit podiums with dozens of wins, underlining how rare Acosta's specific profile is. Consistency to the podium shows elite racecraft and adaptability. The missing top step is a small statistical wrinkle on an otherwise excellent start to a Premier-class career. Acosta's skill set explains the podium tally. Fearless starts, aggressive overtakes, and an uncanny ability to manage races when the opportunity arises. He reads chaotic races well and extracts maximum from KTM's package when strategy and tire life align. Those traits turn potential top 10 finishes into regular podium threats. In short, Acosta makes the most of moments, which gets you on the box even when the bike isn't the absolute class leader. Several practical reasons sit behind the lack of wins. KTM's RC16 can be brilliant on certain tracks and in certain windows, but it still lacks the ultra-consistent top-speed traction profile of the best factory Ducatis on many circuits. Race incidents, strategic choices, and the tiny margins that separate first from second starts, a late tire drop, a stronger rival stint, have repeatedly denied Acosta the decisive pass to P1. When winning requires clearing a small additional performance hurdle, 1 or 2 tenths, or a single perfect lap sequence, can make all the difference. Acosta himself is untroubled by the stat. He's repeatedly said the win will come when the time is right. Focusing on learning, consistency and extracting the most from the KTM. That calm approach, enjoying the process rather than obsessing over trophies, is often the healthiest route for a young rider's long career. Confidence without desperation. That mental mix helps Acosta convert podiums into long-term development rather than short-term pressure. A cluster of practical improvements would tilt the odds. A step up in KTM's qualifying pace to start closer. Marginal top-speed traction gains from the factory, a perfect launch and a little race luck. Couple that with Acosta's natural race instinct, and the result becomes probable rather than possible. In MotoGP terms, convert one small weakness into parity, and the 9 podiums suddenly look like the prelude to multiple victories. Pedro Acosta's record. most Spanish podiums without a win, is an intriguing footnote, not a warning light. It underlines an undeniable truth. He is already among the class's most effective competitors. The missing victory feels more like a timing issue than a talent gap. If KTM continue to refine the package and Acosta keeps converting opportunities with his current blend of bravery and racecraft, the waiting room for that first win won't be long. Bagnaia ran in podium contention and was matching leader times through the race's first third. On lap 12 his pace dropped. By lap 13 he was losing time in the corners and being overtaken, and the rear continued to deteriorate until he eventually pulled off on lap 18.
I started to feel a big drop in the rear starting on lap 12. I started having a lot of trouble controlling the rear.
The sudden swing in lap times coincides precisely with the telemetry spike. Not a gradual tire wear issue but an abrupt loss that changed the race in an instant. After Bagnaia returned to the pits, engineers inspected the tire and the logged sensors. The rear showed a dramatic pressure fall, and visual checks found a sizable puncture in the center tread. Data playback pointed to the puncture event initiating on lap 12. Team analysis confirmed the puncture timing and the rapid worsening of performance thereafter. When telemetry and physical inspection align, the technical verdict is straightforward. A puncture, not a setup failure, stole the result. Engineers in Michelin conclude the most likely cause was a sharp fragment, probably carbon from an earlier incident, that lodged in the tire and gradually compromised the casing before detaching and allowing the tire to deflate. This explains why Bagnaia could limp on for several laps while lap times slid. We saw from the data that the puncture occurred on lap 12. Evidently, whatever it was, the nail or whatever, came loose, and the tire definitely deflated. Tardozzi's statement. It's a cruel sequence. The object gives the tire temporary survival, and then, when it finally releases, the tire collapses. Too late for a competitive repair. Before the puncture, Bagnaia had been managing a medium front tire strategy and appeared capable of challenging for a podium. The pressure loss led to lack of rear grip, worsening corner exits, and ultimately a missed entry to turn 1 that ended his race. The sprint win and the earlier pace made the retirement all the more galling. Tactical choices, front compound, were not the root cause, the puncture was. Without it, Bagnaia likely remains a genuine threat to the front group. Incidents where debris causes a central tread rupture are rare in modern MotoGP. Michelin and teams treat these as exceptional bad luck, rather than systemic tire failure. The immediate focus will be on debris sweep procedures and on reviewing video to attempt to trace the source of the fragment. Teams can change setup or tire strategy. They cannot control a tiny, sharp shard on the racing line. In this case, data removes doubt. It was an unforeseeable on-track hazard. Telemetry, tire checks and team analysis closed the case. Pecco Bagnaia's Sepang retirement was the result of a puncture that began on lap 12 and gradually destroyed his rear grip. For a rider and team who had finally found encouraging form, it was cruel luck rather than lost setup or poor driving. The takeaway is simple. Bagnaia's pace was real. The result was stolen by a tiny, invisible piece of carbon and a set of circumstances no one could have planned for. Thanks for watching ZNGP Today, and this is your MotoGP news update, and see you next time. See you next time.